Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome to our panel about, I think, maybe the most important topic in journalism right now, and also a topic that's been seen a lot of panels with this topic, is trust. Like in this time of Brexit, Trump, fake news, as a media, we are in defense right now. And it's really important for us to earn that trust every day. So we have to work really hard for that. And in this panel today, we're going to try to give you tools that we use in our newsrooms to improve that trust and to improve that trust with our readers. So I want to introduce our panel today. My name is Stijn Bronzwaer. I'm the deputy editor-in-chief of NRC, a Dutch newspaper, national newspaper. And right next to me is Virginia Alonso. She works as a co-editor-in-chief for Público. And Taneth Evans, the head of audience for the Times and the Sunday Times. So what we want to do is we have one concrete example, the three of us, from a plan of something we did in our newsrooms to improve trust with readers. And the first thing I want to show you guys is a very interesting tool that Público used in their newsroom for trust, and there's a little video with that to introduce that. It's about 2 minutes. It's called the TJ tool. And there's no sound. Not working?
Sorry. I don't know why.
Okay.
Preference is this.
On the last one. This one?
Which one?
No. Well, let's leave the videos, I guess. But
Preference is this.
that's the one on the bottom.
No, not this. I'm sorry.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, very good. Okay. Configure. Okay. Sorry.
Con usted.
Okay. There it is. Okay.
Es TJ Tool, la herramienta digital con la que los medios de comunicación queremos devolver a los lectores la confianza en el periodismo. Esta es nuestra cocina. Presentamos la News Cuisine. Señora, ¿qué le gustaría tomar?
Me gustaría un buen plato de información fiable.
Está usted de suerte. Esa es nuestra recomendación del día. Bienvenida a la News Cuisine. Déjeme que le muestre cómo funciona el proceso de creación de una información periodística gracias a nuestra herramienta de transparencia TJ Tool. Cuando vamos a un buen restaurante, queremos saber qué plato vamos a comer, cuáles son los ingredientes, quién es el cocinero. Con la información periodística ocurre lo mismo. El periodismo implica una serie de procesos que garantizan el rigor de una noticia. Por eso, para los lectores es importante conocer quién la ha escrito, cuándo lo ha hecho
Es fresca.
o cuáles son sus fuentes.
Aquí traigo su pedido.
¿Cómo puede saber el lector de un vistazo si la información que tiene delante es fiable? Aquí es donde entra TJ Tool, Transparent Journalism Tool. Es una herramienta de transparencia que, mediante tecnología apoyada en inteligencia artificial, ayudará a los periodistas, mientras escriben, a crear contenidos más transparentes y rastreables, desvelando por completo el proceso que siguen para elaborar la noticia. Mientras el periodista escribe, TJ Tool arrastrará del CMS 8 indicadores. Veremos la política editorial del medio, o por qué se aborda el tema, por ejemplo. Por supuesto, el autor de la noticia, la fecha o el lugar en el que se ha escrito. La inteligencia artificial ayudará a encontrar las fuentes del texto. Traerá también los documentos consultados para redactarla y los documentos de contexto. En el mismo momento en que se publica la noticia, se crea su mapa de transparencia, con un gráfico claro y dinámico que permitirá a los lectores rastrear nuestro trabajo. Solo hay que buscar la T del mapa de transparencia en la noticia. Así de fácil. Con TJ Tool queremos que los lectores se sientan seguros de que no les damos gato por liebre, de que están ante un periodismo que reúne los estándares más altos de transparencia y trazabilidad. Al fin y al cabo, los lectores son lo más importante para nosotros. Aquí tiene, señora, el plato que quería.
Could you tell us something about this, Virginia? How does it work, and how does it work for you guys?
Well, it's working fine. In Público, this is a way that we choose to tackle both misinformation and to build trust with readers. And as you have seen, TJ Tool is not about promising that we are going to meet high standards of journalism, but about evaluating and measuring if we really do. So I think that this is the most new point about this tool. And how do we measure? Okay, we settled 8 transparency indicators, and we assigned a value to each of them. Sources is the most valuable for us. We consider that it had to have the greatest weight in this tool, up to 20%. It was very difficult to deal with classifying the sources in terms of transparency and of traceability. And finally, we came up with an order, some categories, which are person, institution, or organization, other media or agencies, unnamed sources, and anonymous sources, which are protected sources. After, I'll tell you more about this. The second indicator is making public the editorial policy of the media outlet. This gives up to 15% of the transparency value. This includes the ownership of media and the percentage of revenues that come from public institutions, something that in Spain is quite often and not transparent at all. The third indicator is the motive, is explaining why we choose an issue to inform about. This gave us another 15%. And this includes saying loud and clear what contents are branded content, for example. And in the case of Público, which is a medium-sized media, we are focused about 10 thematic areas. I mean, we are not divided on the traditional sections. We have political and state surveillance, investigative journalism on corruption, climatic change, feminism, and so on. And these thematic areas are what we call our editorial flags. And for us, it's very important that our readers know that we work in this way, because this is the main thing that differentiates us from another media outlets. The rest of indicators weigh up to 10% each, and you can find them all at a web that we have. It's called transparentjournalism.org, because I'm not going to have time to go over all of them, but they are author, the place where the information is written, the support documents, contexts, and dates. Another important thing about TJ Tool is that it's almost automatic. While the journalist is writing the story, the calculator extracts automatically all the indicators but sources. In this case, we developed a predictive language-based algorithm that finds the sources in the text, and actually it has a success rate of 60%, which for developers is good, and for journalists is not that good, but it works fine. And it is important to know that it takes the journalist about 2 minutes to check that everything is all right, okay? And then just publish the story and the transparency map shows up. So from the very moment that the readers open the public information, they will find this T symbol, and by clicking on it, they will see the transparency map. And through this map, they can track the journalistic work that is behind every single information. So this is about traceability, this is about transparency, and it's about this transparency that we ask for public institutions and that journalists and media outlets, at least in Spain, don't use too often. At the end, it's about ethics. We launched this tool last October after 3 months of testing it in Público. Our journalists like it because they feel as they can show all the work they do, and that is a fair tool. Our readers like it also because they feel they can trust us, and it is helping us with our subscription program, but I think that we'll talk about that later. Yeah. And by now, Público's information has reached an average value of 68% in their information, okay, in 68% of transparency. Over 20 media outlets has asked us for using this tool, most of them out of Spain. And well, it's an open code. We have a plugin for WordPress, and we'll talk more about later. Okay. Thanks.
A different, what's very important, of course, for gaining trust is education. And I thought a very inspiring idea is brought by Taneth. We'll also have a short video to introduce this.
Free to all UK schools and colleges, the Times and the Sunday Times News Literacy Programme provides downloadable lesson plans which feature real journalism and give students the skills to differentiate between fake news, fact, satire and opinion. Our journalists always dig for the truth. They verify their facts and question everything to uncover the real stories. Students will learn how to establish the truth and critique the news they get, as well as the importance of journalism, by studying real stories, research and investigations from leading journalists at the Times and the Sunday Times. The programme teaches students to question where news comes from, who it comes from, and why it all matters. The Times and the Sunday Times News Literacy Programme.
Can you tell some, elaborate on this? How does this, who thought of the idea and did it work for you guys?
So the reason I brought this along is when I think about trust, I immediately think about transparency. I pick up a piece and I think, where's it from? Who's written it? Who did they speak to when they were writing it? But as journalists, I think we can often fall guilty of assuming that people go through the same processes as us and that they know the same things that we know, they're thinking the same things, they know the editorial rigmarole we go through, they know the importance of sources, they know what an investigative reporter's doing every day. And they don't, because why should they and why would they when no one's told them? So that's why I thought it was important to bring this along for a talk about trust, because we really can't expect people to trust things unless we're telling them how to trust it and how to think about it. So this program is a series of 6 lessons. It's freely available for secondary school teachers and 6th form teachers to download and take their students through. It teaches them how to critique the news, how to tell the difference between real, trustworthy news and not so real news. I can't say fake news. He's really taken that away from us, hasn't he? But not just that. It's teaching them how to tell the difference between news and opinion and satire, which is also really important when it comes to trust. And it encourages them to talk about the importance of news and why it's important for them to discuss it with each other, to know about it. And it also encourages a discussion about what would happen if they didn't have a trustworthy news source, which is a really valuable thing to do. And so it's kind of my hope, and I think the hope of the Times, that through this program we'll build a cohort of young people growing up able to make informed decisions on what they read, what they write, what they distribute, what they share around. And as a result, have a more inherent trust in what they're reading, because trust is ultimately born from knowledge. And if you have the knowledge that you're equipped to make the right decisions, then that trust is easier for you to have in yourself, I think.
Yeah. I also think, brings me to the next point, is like, the trust it's also, especially for a traditional newspaper like my newspaper and maybe probably also the Times, is there's such a big gap between the reader and the story itself, especially for a newspaper. So how do you close that gap? How do you get the reader closer to the journalist that wrote the story? And one of the things we did is, and you'll see me here on the pictures talking to readers, meeting readers, which is, it's pretty interesting that a lot of journalists don't know who their readers are. They don't speak to readers. They don't talk to readers. They know a lot about the data, the reader data, and how many people read them. But actually meeting readers, that's something we've been doing since a little while in two ways. We've been physically meeting them. This is our office. There were 12 readers just coming. We had drinks for them. We had snacks for them, and they could ask questions. All types of questions. There were some people asking, like, how do you write your editorial? How does that work? Another reader asks, okay, podcast, why do you do that? And I want to read my podcast. Is that possible? All types of questions. And one of the other things we also do is we call them. We just call them. So we have a few of our journalists just sitting by the phone around 6 o'clock and just randomly call readers. It's not like at newspapers, they're very used to the customer service department call readers when they want to cancel their subscription to try to help them like get a new one. And this was something that what we're doing here is just randomly call readers. So around dinner time, we just call them and we just ask them, we tell them, no, we don't want to sell you something. We just want to know, what do you think of the newspaper? It has, you'll be thinking like people maybe don't want that or they're not interested in it, but I had a reader, one of the readers said, okay, I'm going to put my child to bed and the pizza's almost done, and then please call me back because I want to talk to you. And it was actually like a 45-minute conversation. He wanted to know everything about like how do you decide what news is, all that kind of stuff. And it works both ways, you know. So it's good very good for our journalists to talk to readers to know how smart they are, like what they, how much they're invested in what you're making. And on the flip side is also the readers that are very honored to speak to somebody from the newspaper. So, and to elaborate a little more on that, because Taneth, you've also done just a thing, right? You're like bringing readers into the newsroom. Was that something the Times did?
Yeah.
How did that work for you guys?
Yeah.
Or not?
So we have a long history of connecting with our readers through our membership program, Times Plus. They give them nice things and they chat to them. But Times Plus, although we work very closely, isn't an editorial team. So we decided a couple of years ago as an editorial team to do a similar thing. So the first one we did, we invited readers in to chat about Brexit.
Oh.
And the way that we chose them was we went below the line in our comments and chose the most prolific, always chatting about Brexit with each other commenters below the line. We invited them in to chat, and we also invited Oliver Wright and Henry Zeffman, our Brexit reporters. So they were talking about what they do day to day, how they find a story, how they decide what's a story, which they loved, and I think was great for our trust. It allowed them to listen. We also invited Danny Finkelstein, one of our opinion writers, and he writes about Brexit a lot. And that was fascinating because they were saying things like, who tells you what to write? And he was like, no one tells me what to write. I decide what to write. It's my opinion. It's an opinion.
And were they all like leave or remain? Or were they mixed?
Mix.
Oh, that's interesting.
They were a mix. And so it was like a bit frosty at first, but then we gave them tea, we gave them sandwiches, and it was fine. But it was fascinating. These things that we take for granted, that opinion writers write their opinion, readers were kind of really shocked to hear us kind of vehemently say, no, they're writing their opinion, we're not telling them what to write. And actually has this really positive side effect. They were all a bit friendlier with each other in the comments after that. They knew who each other were, they were chatting, they had this kind of micro community with each other, so that was a great thing that came from it too.
It's also, like there's a newspaper in Chicago that has a very interesting experiment that they, before the morning meeting, they ask a panel of readers, what do you want to know about this news subject? So there's like a war in Syria going on, and they're asking a panel of readers, okay, what are the questions you're having with this subject? and then they bring that into the newsroom in the morning. So they'll say, okay, this is what the readers want to know. They want to know, when is IS finally, when is it over, or what's coming next, and then that's a voice into the decision process. So I think that's also very, like, how far can you go as a newspaper in bringing the reader into the newspaper? Is there a discussion in your organizations about that?
Yeah, well, actually, like a few years ago, I was working in another newspaper, and what we used to do was that we had this white panel, and we wrote there the stories that we were going to work on during the day. And when we did the conference in the newsroom, we just picture that panel and just put it on social network, and people was commenting it on real time, you know. And we had this journalist that was reading all the comments, and we integrated those comments in the conference meeting in the morning. And well, sometimes we introduce some change because, I mean, some points of view were very valuable. Now, in media that I work now in Público, we don't do that. We don't have these meetings with readers. But what we do is that we invite our subscribers to some events, some panels that we organize around our main issues. And so they have access to the journalists. They have access to me or to the other editor-in-chief, so we can have conversations, but thematic conversations.
I can't stress enough how valuable they are, and I was guilty of underestimating, I think, and thinking, well, I can't take what the readers are asking us to the editor and say we should write about this because they know what they're doing. I can't, but it's exactly the opposite. Every reporter loves it. They love hearing what our readers are wanting from them, and we're behind quite a hard paywall, so our subscribers pay quite a lot of money. We're expensive compared to our competitors, and it really means that they're invested in us. So those comments that they're leaving, they're often specialists. You know, we'll write about a medical story and they'll say, well, I'm a professor of medicine and I can tell you that, and it's like, wow, great. So sometimes it gets us new stories. Sometimes we can take the comments and put them in the story. Sometimes we can call them up and chat to them. They're our second set of journalists. I don't know what the second one is. Yes, so valuable.
And what about Q&As with reporters? Because there are, of course, different ways to do that. Facebook Live. For our newspaper, we've been trying that, and also right now we have the commenting system Talk that we use. It's also the Washington Post has that, and it's a really easy way to let subscribers respond to stories and also ask questions to reporters. You guys been doing that? Do people really want that? Because we've done a poll with our readers that said 1/3 of the readers say to us, just bring me my newspaper, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. I just want my newspaper. 1/3 says, maybe it's interesting. And 1/3 says, I really want to talk to the journalist. I want to contribute. So
it's really helpful of them.
Yeah, so in the end, you don't know what to do, of course. But how did that go for you, the Q&As? Is that something that works?
When it works 100%. Readers love it. They love it when they get a reply from their writers. Anecdotally, they've said to us, I'll never cancel my subscription now. This is excellent. And so that kind of works out quite well. What is more difficult and what we haven't quite got to grips with yet is getting it right on our end. So sometimes we've got a reporter there ready. We say they're doing a Q&A, come along. And readers will just say, oh, I love your work, which is nice, but you know, it's not really having the discussion. Sometimes a reporter's called away on something understandably, and then we're kind of left with loads of questions that we don't really want to answer because it's the expert. So we're really figuring out how to promote it, how to schedule it, how to make it kind of work. But on the other side, when we kind of don't schedule Q&As and reporters just pop into their comments and reply to them, that is undeniably so valuable, showing their expertise, showing what they've done. So that's really good, and I wish we could do more of it. I just haven't cracked quite how to do it yet.
We've done it, not a lot of times, like 3 or 4 times, this Q&A, and it really didn't work for us. I mean, I don't know if the issues that we chose were the right ones.
What were the issues you tried?
Political, overall. But I mean, in some moments that political was key, you know. And I don't know, I've done it myself with TJ Tool, and we do it through Facebook. And so people just leave the questions, and then we answer them, and there's this conversation. But actually, I mean, for us at least, it's like too much effort and not as much results. So we are not doing that anymore. And what we are trying to improve is the conversation through the comments, because now our subscribers are the only ones that can comment on our website, no one else. So the level of the level of the conversation is quite good, and they ask questions to the reporters, so the reporters can answer. They don't do that very often. We're trying that they do it more, but we feel that people is very thankful when that occurs. So we're working on that.
There's also a lot of discussion in media about events, right? The correspondent, one of the media from the Netherlands, that's it's been a lot around here also, and a lot of talks. They recently stopped doing their events because they think it's a lot of effort for not too many people. With our newspaper, we're expanding our events because we're seeing the physical contact between journalists and readers. It's very important for the feeling of community. But how do you guys feel about that? Events, are you doing that? Is that working for you guys?
Yeah, so as I said, we've got a kind of arm, a subscriber loyalty program. They run events where we have our reporters talking about their big stories, or we have one of our editors interviewing someone interesting, often a politician. And they're very well attended, they're very good. It's more of a retention tool, which I think is important. Editorially, we have events, but to be honest, it's more to meet our own ends. It's more when we want something and we want to, and it's normally information that we want. So we, for example, had our female commenters in and said to them, we've noticed that our skew of commenters skews very male, more male than our reader skew is. So firstly, we've got more males, but then even more of them are commenting compared to the women that we've got. And we just got them in to chat about how we could make it a nice place for them to comment, what they might like to comment about. And so we do it, but it's more of a kind of a treat for us than a treat for the readers, I think. Although they always get a sandwich or two.
So you wouldn't do a Brexit panel, for example. Is that something you would try?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
I mean, as we said, we had those kind of a chat about Brexit thing. And Times Plus does often have our political commenters kind of going at each other in a friendly way. You know, people want to hear, surprisingly, people still want to hear about Brexit, so it is still a useful thing. I think.
We do this kind of events, panels, and we do also, we stream some theater shows, you know.
Theater shows? What's that about?
Yeah, it's like not with journalists. I mean, no, not yet. But well, we have disagreements with some shows that we think our readers like, and we invite our subscribers to go to these shows, and then we stream them. But for us, I mean, it was a surprise. We only have this subscription program for 1 year. We just put it there last year. But for us, it was a surprise that not a lot of people just want to go to these places, you know. And when you offer that, we thought that everybody was going to say, "Hey, I'm going," and it's not that way. I mean. Yeah, people goes, but not in a massive way.
I think one thing that we found is that the more niche, the better. If you've got a kind of really niche, engaged audience around something. So one thing that we do is the CEO Summit, and we invite CEOs, but you don't have to be just one. And they talk about business, and they network with each other, and that's incredibly popular because it's really, really kind of a really engaged audience on one tiny thing, and they know what they're coming for, they know what they're going to get. And so I think when you try to go broader and say, do you want to come in to the Times, have a look, then yeah, you get a less of a good take-up, I think.
Do you also like events in venues? or just that you're in your newsroom?
Not editorially, but again, that kind of more retention-based arm definitely does. Yeah, we recently had a screening of A Private War, the film about Marie Colvin, our war correspondent that died, and that was incredibly popular. Yeah.
And that was so you did a screening of the film, and then afterwards a debate or something, or Q&A.
Yeah, with Rosamund Pike, who was in the film.
Okay. A different subject is audio, because I was just elaborating on the gap between the reader and the piece of journalism, and what I've been noticing, and a lot of news organizations have been noticing, is that audio really closes that gap, because it's literally, it's in your ears. You hear the journalist talk, you hear him elaborate how difficult it is to write some stories. They become human beings. And I know that my fellow panelists are also experimenting with podcasts. I'm very interested to hear from Taneth. How's that for the times? Are you happy with the podcast you're doing, or are you thinking about business models?
Podcasts are weird, aren't they? Because everyone was like, oh, you gotta do podcasts. It was like, it's probably now how people are talking about voice. Maybe it's like the kind of bullet that's gonna solve everything. And a great podcast, as we know, is very commercially viable. It's readers love it. We're about to launch one in a couple of months called Behind the Times, and it's exactly that. It's taking, for example, Anthony Lloyd and talking about how he found Shamima Begum. And we hope that actually on trust, it's going to really narrow that gap and bring our readers a lot closer to us. But one of our most popular podcasts is Red Box, which is political, and hosted by Matt Chorley, one of our political writers. He's very, very funny in his writing, but even more so when he's talking. He launched an email at the same time, a daily email. And so a number of things have gone into making that popular, but one thing, as you say, is just getting him out from his writing, because he's so much more than just that. I mean, he's wonderful in his writing, but he's so much more. And so multimedia is, I think, the strongest tool for that, in showing that personality, bringing those readers closer to him. And now he has a little club. It's incredibly engaged. They write to him every day. They talk to each other and discuss it. And it's become a kind of brand within itself. And that's down to many things, partly the strength of his writing and his personality, partly the political turmoil we're in, I think, but also definitely that face, having that personality out in front.
Yeah, we've also noticed with our political podcast, we've done also wanted to really know, like, who are the people that are listening, because it's very hard. So we did a survey, and we just had one message in the podcast. Please go to this website and fill in the survey. Within one day, we had 500 people respond. Wow. Because it's with like 20 or 25 pages of feedback, and because people are so engaged with what you're making, they're so engaged with the host, because they have the feeling that they know the host, because she gets like love letters from listeners. So it's such an interesting medium to get closer to your audience, I think. How's that for you, Virginia?
We're going to start next week with our first podcast, so we don't know yet how will it work, but we are not doing it with the journalists of the newsroom. We are doing it with someone from outside.
An expert.
Yeah, an expert, in this case in historical memory about the victims of Franco and so on. And well, next year I could tell you, not now.
Yeah, okay. Last thing I want to talk about is maybe one of the biggest things, but it's transparency in reporting. It's like the way we tell stories, like you were saying, Taneth, you have the podcast Behind the Times. A lot of newspapers or news organizations, they do that. They give extra information about the story. We have this little about this article boxes we put next to investigative stories, where you tell we have this many sources, we wrote about this, it took us 3 months, we have emails, we have documents. And I'm always wondering, the readers really want to know these things. Are they really interested in it? Is it? I don't really know how to feel about that. What do you think?
Well, I think that they say that they are interested in that, but when you look at the figures, really it isn't.
No.
I mean, they are no. For example, in TJ Tool, when we do a lot of work of distribution on social network, maybe a 15 of our total audience opens the transparency map, which is in every single story. Okay, so.
So they want transparency, but if they get it, they don't read it or they don't look at it.
I think I mean, to have that there, and that they know that it is there and that they can go over it and consult it, makes them feel comfortable and trusty. Okay, but they don't really feel like they need to go over every single indicator and check if everything is at they think it should be. You know, I mean, I think that is pretty much what you said before, that they want the information. Yeah. But when you give them this addition, I mean, they like to know that it is there. Okay, and yes, we have a lot of subscriptors that thanks us for this tool and that says that it is pretty useful. And it's true that when people just clicks inside, spends like 6-7 minutes in the map. So, I mean, when they get there, they like it. But I'm not sure that they really want to know every single detail of the information.
Audiences that I've spoken to, and not just ours, I speak a lot to people that should be readers and figure out why they're not. And they're really vocal, particularly young people, the younger side of our readership, that they really want to know exactly where each piece of information comes from. And obviously, firstly, we can't always do that because sources need protecting in some cases, and so that's a kind of difficult conversation to have. But I think, again, it really goes back to that kind of literacy of knowing how things are put together, knowing what our relationship with sources are like, knowing how many sources we need to stand up a story, and knowing, you know, the kind of rigmarole that a story goes through almost. You know, one person is not writing this and putting it in our newspaper, how many people it's going through and all of that. And again, I think that's enough, that kind of knowing that something's there and something's behind it, because I think it would be exhausting if every news story that you read, you then read exactly how it was. You know, it's kind of fun when you do it with one big story, but I don't know who could genuinely be interested in hearing every single step of every single story. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't have any data to back that. But.
Yeah, I agree, and it shouldn't be about the journalist, it should be about the topic still, right? So, but what you're saying is you have to show the documents, you have to show, and you have to tell them, but people don't really have to read those documents that you add.
It's kind of the job of us, right?
Yeah. Just showing it is probably more than enough. Yeah.
I think there's a line between good journalism that makes it really clear that it's trusted and where it come from, and just not being a journalist at all and just giving you the sources and letting you do it yourself. You're not telling a story if you're just giving everything over.
Yeah, and I mean, and there are some things that you can never tell. I mean, I was talking before about sources, and we differentiate between unnamed sources, because in Spain it's very commonly off the record, and a lot of politicians don't want to be recorded on the stories, and they just want to say, okay, a politician from this party or from another, you know. And at first we didn't include that part in the TJ tool. But our journalists said that they were doing their job in an accurate way, but that the tool didn't show this work because we didn't reflect this kind of sources. But then we have these anonymous sources, which are protected sources, and we cannot reveal those, of course, you know. And that doesn't mean that quality journalism can't be transparent, maybe.
That's interesting. How do you deal with that also in the Behind the Times podcast? How do you deal with that? How do you...
You'll have to see when it comes out.
Oh yeah. So how do you be transparent about things that you just can't tell because you have to protect sources? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think you have to be honest, right? You have to be clear, and there's no reason prettying it up and telling a story around why you can't do it. I think readers want clarity and they want transparency, and that's what we've got to do.
Yeah, okay. All right, are there any questions? Yes, I think there's a microphone somewhere.
Thank you. That was really interesting, and I have a question. I run a company opinory which aims to give readers a very easy way to express their opinion in articles beyond the comment section, or the Times, for example, or Matt Chorley from Redbox is really elaborated in giving his users in his newsletter community a voice and enabling them to share their opinion. And one experience that we've made is that users who are engaged and express themselves are much more likely to convert into other offers like newsletters or subscriptions or retention driving things. And for that reason, I've been thinking how much more opportunity there would be to address readers engaged in comment sections with rewards or offers beyond just having a conversations and discussion with them, giving them rewards and, for example, for sharing their expertise on a topic, rewarding them with a free trial or whatever. And I was wondering if one of you experts on these topics have experiences with that.
I don't. But I think it's a really interesting arena, and someone who I cannot pull from my brain, but it might have been H&M, it was like some sort of mid-range clothing retailer, did a really interesting thing where they had like a points system and then they gave like actual clothing back, or something that's sticking in my brain, and it's always stayed with me because it feels like that kind of points system should be with us in some way, and some sort of kind of reward for good quality chat on our website. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you kind of get to the bottom of it, but I feel like there's definitely something in it, particularly when we're crying out for those experts to kind of come in. How do we badge them properly? How do we reward them for getting involved? At the moment, the most you get is a kind of little recommend, and it's really good when you've got loads of recommends and we give you a thumbs up. We do things like kind of taking really good comments, and we every day put the best comment in our lunchtime email, so a kind of pat on the back, but I completely agree, there's loads more that could be done there, I think.
I built a few years ago in another newspaper a tool for comments, which was very interesting and measured all that. I mean, they just give value to the readers that whose comments were better or more constructive. They also could send what we called contributions, which were for complementing the information that they were reading, or to just give us information about another things, you know. And also in our piece of news, we had this this kind of widget that it was said like with the clue with the tip of this reader, you know, and those were tips given to us through this tool, you know. But actually, I mean, it took us like a year to develop this thing. It was a website in which we had like 300,000 comments a month, which is a lot. And it was very difficult to moderate in an appropriate way everything, you know. I'm not working there anymore. I don't know what they have done with that, but I think it was a good idea for that time, but probably it was too soon to work with that.
Questions? Yeah.
Hi. I have 3 questions actually, but I promise it will be very, very quick. The first one is for the whole panel, and speaking of the 3 projects you presented before, what are the KPI you looked at? How did you measure the impact of these projects? And then I wanted to ask Virginia, if you have, or your publication has ever asked your readers why they're not joining your Q&As. What's the reason why they don't participate? And last thing, or Stijn, if you have done this kind of in-person projects, also with the audience of NRC Next, your spin-off publication. Thank you.
Yeah, well, the last question, yeah, it's just the whole audience. So the 2 newspapers merged, so they're about the same. One is in the morning, others in the evening. So there's a little, in the morning we just add a few stories, but it's about the same. So it's like, there were readers from the 30-year-old readers to 50-year-old readers. And to ask your first question, there were no KPIs. It was just, it's very good to have those KPIs for like big stuff, like we're launching a daily podcast soon, and then we have KPIs. But things like we're going to meet 10 readers in our newsroom and we're just going to talk to them once every 2 months, that's just like, it's just a good idea, and it's good that we have it, but we don't have goals or something, or that we need to make money out of it, or we need to have subscriptions, or it's just something we just think it feels right and feels good to do. So
we didn't ask our readers why didn't they join our Q&A, because we were just experimenting. I mean, as we are doing with a lot of things, with podcasts is the same thing. I mean, we're trying. Let's see what happens, you know, and because, I mean, we are 35 at my newsroom. It's not that a bunch of people to be doing a lot of things. So we try, we see, and then we decide, you know. In this case, we decided that probably the issues we selected were not the right ones, but we have to figure out which issues are the right ones and try again. And about the KPIs, well, we didn't settle exactly KPIs, but we did know what we wanted to reach, and it has two ways. I mean, the journalistic way and the reader's way. Okay, on a journalistic point of view, what we wanted to make sure it was first that this didn't mean more amount of work for our journalists, and that they felt comfortable with this, and absolutely that our transparency rate were at a high level. Now we are at 68. I don't know if that's high or not. I mean, it's fine. Yeah. It's fine, but I mean, it could be better, and we're working on that. And every morning, we have this automatic inform when it say, okay, these are all the news and the rating of every story, and I go through that and see if something looks weird, you know, and just talk to the journalists and say, what happened here, you know. And the other way is the readers one, and we are measuring how many times do they enter the map, how many time do they spend there, and as I told you, there are not a bunch of people entering in the map, but we already knew that when we developed this tool. I mean, we thought that this would happen, okay? But now, since the tool was born on October, we're giving us a year to just see the whole picture, you know, and evaluate how is it working.
I mean, yeah, we didn't want to get subscribers off the back of it. We don't want to make money off the back of it. It's very much a kind of for the good of the people thing. But I guess we'll know if it's worked when schools pick it up and start teaching their kids. So hopefully that will happen. We just launched. So hopefully I can come back next year and tell you that there's loads of teenagers that are evaluating their news sources.
Okay, is there another last question? Yeah?
Hi, I'm Frits from Holland also. In the end of the day, it's all about resources. There are only 24 hours and we still have some reporting to do probably. So how much energy you think you're spending now on these efforts, and how much energy out of percentage should you be spending on it in order to strengthen trust?
In our case, we measured that. I mean, because what we didn't want in any way was the journalists to have more work than they had. And it takes them 2 minutes to check if everything is all right with the tool. Yeah, and with the tool. And then we think that the effort is worth it. I mean, we think that the informations that we're working on get better because of this tool, because it's like a reminder of everything you have to do in the right way. And in other aspects of gaining trust, I really couldn't say, but it's not really an effort from the newsroom. I mean, people in the newsroom just knows that they have to answer people. I mean, it's like a polite thing, you know. If somebody's asking you something, you should answer. I mean, and if this person is doing that through the comments on your website, you absolutely have to do that. But I mean, never. No journalist has come to me and what's the word in English? And
Complain?
Yeah, complain about that. You know, I mean, they complain about other things, but not about this.
Yeah, the same for us really. We encourage reporters to get involved in comments below the line, but we're very aware that there are other priorities that have to come first. But we're a subscription publisher. You know, we want to grow our readership, and it's cheaper to retain a reader and keep them as a subscriber than it is to acquire new ones. So that's why engagement is really so important for the newsroom. So it's about kind of really thinking about how you can increase that engagement through these things like getting in the comments. And as far as the kind of getting people in and chatting to them, we have a newly created community team who really focus on things like community journalism, the comments below the line, those kind of getting readers in and talking to them. So that's their kind of entire role, to focus on these things, because we think they're really important.
Okay, that was it for us. Thanks so much for coming.